of years. So
Yeah.
it's been pretty bad here lately.
Well, it's impossible to make money now anyway. We're under debit and credit. I read an excellent article about an economist that said why back in the 60s, places were booming because they could reinvest money back into their business, and you can't do that anymore. It's impossible because of the way the system's set up.
Yeah, going back to the money again, it's worthless. Most of us know this. The paper money is not worth 1 cent.
It's only by the favor of Yahuwah that we have a perceived value of this money at all, because it's absolutely worthless. It's not a promissory note. It's worthless, but only by the favor of Yahuwah is it still working. So now this year, maybe in the next few months, they're talking about doing away with the dollar and replacing it with another fiat currency. That's going to be a lot worse. Oh, they're talking about, back in the 50s, 40s and 50s, you could buy gold for, it was $20 an ounce. Right now it's $1,200 to $1,400 an ounce. Well, they said after they do this, it's not the currency they're talking about certainly will not be tied to gold, because they're saying that gold will be like $10,000 an ounce. That, in other words, put that in perspective. If you pay $10,000 for a car now, you'd be paying $100,000 for it after this in this new currency. So it's just going to get worse because it's lawless, has nothing to do with Yahuwah, is not based on any intrinsic material.
You won't even be able to afford a loaf of bread.
Well,
right.
That's right.
That's how the Great Depression came about. Well, look at when the formation of the Federal Reserve and the crooked bankers that wrote out banknotes for gold and silver that didn't even exist over and over and over. They deflated the value of currency secretly. When you got 10 people in town that each go put 20 ounces of silver into Mr. Finkerbocker's bank, that's 200 ounces of silver. But Mr. Finkerbocker's got written out, 2,000 ounces of banknotes when there's only really 200 ounces in the bank. But none of them know the difference because none of them going to all cash in at the same time, and they're just trusting in Mr. Finkerbocker. Well, that's what went down from the early 1900s with the Morgans, the Chases, and the Freemans, up until the Great Depression. That's what brought on the Great Depression, was them deflating and deflating and putting notes out for stuff that don't exist, to the point where they did it so much that a loaf of bread wouldn't even, a wheelbarrow full wouldn't even go for. And that's how the Great Depression happened, and that's exactly what Kennedy was talking about in his speech about the enslaving the people, that the conspiracy of an elite group of people, a small number that's networked in, and he gave that speech, that the reason why they killed him, because he flat out let it know to everybody, right in everybody's ears and eyes, that he was not standing for that organization that was doing that, and he put in presidential order to make the money be more back to being based on silver and gold, and they weren't having it. Yeah,
that's right.
So even our own Congress said straight out that the U.S. government doesn't actually own any gold. They don't own any gold. No,
last I heard, it was let's see. Well, it's probably changed now, but last I heard, most of it was sent to Frankfurt, Germany, and probably most of it now is in China.
It's not in the
probably
Catholic Church.
Rome, Rome's always had their hands in on it, for sure. Yeah,
absolutely. And then 1933, to make it worse, totally illegal, they outlawed gold. And if you were caught with any gold, you would be sent to jail for 10 years. But you could still use your worthless dollar and transfer it. You could still get gold for your dollar in a foreign country. And Richard Nixon shut that down in 1971. So we were still doing okay, considering, even up till about 1976. And that's when everything started catching up. I've got catalogs, Motorola catalogs, anything made in America. And I could see the prices from 76 to 89. The same part went from $1.50, $2, $8, $50, and just kept going up for the same part. The part didn't change. It's just the worthlessness of the dollar.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know. You can buy a brand new TV made in America, but you'll pay $20,000 to $30,000 for it because it's made by American labor. But that, you know, the whole Illuminati set up China under slave labor, and we absolutely cannot compete with slave labor. These poor people get $1 a day, maybe, for what they do, and it's junk. We've all fallen for it. This is all the Illuminati, and the only reason we're still around today is because of the favor of Yahuwah, and he is about fed up with it. We have to make ourselves ready. Bottom line.
Yeah. This nation's got some crap coming to it. Big
Absolutely.
time. Big time, because we've been milking the whole world with our bull crap.
Yes.
Not only milking them, but poisoning them in the process of while we're milking them too.
Absolutely. We're under the beast
pornography, the Hollywood, the automobile, everything came from this little land of this little lovely lady, as it's called, as a her, the one who sits as sovereigness, who reigns and says she's not a widow because she prints in God we trust on everything, like claiming to have a husband. Yeah, yes. The land of the complacent ones that are complacent, that say, "I do not see mourning or scarcity."
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the prideful country, proud to be an American, and pride comes before the fall. And we got the most prideful president that we ever had right now, and nothing personally against him, just saying what it represents as this country as a people, as a conglomeration.
Yeah, he's a high wizard in masonry. A lot of people don't understand when he wasn't elected; he was selected, like all of them. And after he supposedly won the election, after he was selected, he and Hillary and everybody else went over to the bar and celebrated.
Yeah,
there's not much difference. If you ever watched Freedom and the Fascism with Aaron Russo, which was murdered over it, he interviewed a lot of people that said there's not much difference between the Republicans and the Democrats. They're like the mafia families. They'll squabble amongst each other, you know, but when something comes in that threatens their system, they both go together and destroy it. That's basically it.
Basically, you can compare politics to pro wrestling in a way. They portrayed as one guy's the good guy, supposedly, and then you got the other person's the bad guy. They call them in wrestling baby faces versus heels. And, then when they're at the bar later on, after the show, after WrestleMania or whatever, they're having drinks with one another, and you find out most of these wrestlers that are supposed to be hating one another on TV, most of them behind the scenes, they're family friends, they know each other's children.
Right, because of the theatrics, because the higher ups make you, they're like, look, if there's not a bad guy, if we don't have a feud, then we can't entertain them. There has to be a feud. There has to be a feud. Most of the feuding is made up theatrics just to get people riled up, to get people sunk in and dug in and pick a side, and they're caught up in the theatrics. And then you have control by manipulating by this fake feud, by having a fake feud go on.
Exactly.
And actually, to go back about what Brother Tobiah was talking about with the principalities, and it's not flesh and blood. You can actually trace that all the way back to Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 8. That right after the Tower of Babel, every nation was given a principality that did not choose Yahuwah. And that's why he says in verse 9 of that chapter, it says, Yashar'al became his inheritance. But all those other nations he gave to those principalities. He gave them into a reprobate mind. Okay, you don't want to serve me, you want to serve Nimrod? All right, I'm going to put each nation under an angel. And actually the Targum says he gave 70 angels to 70 nations, basically. So each angel had a Gentile nation. So each
their own territory.
Yeah, so
I've heard about that years ago.
France has got the messenger of fashion. That's the fashion capital of the world right there.
Yeah. He probably got Satan himself, the transgender.
Yeah, I heard that Florida is under the messenger of confusion.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've heard about this years ago too.
Who's that?
Yeah, Florida is under the messenger of confusion.
Really?
Florida?
Yeah.
Huh.
Illinois is under the messenger of illness.
Illness.
Huh.
Yeah, it's under.
Well, I am coming face to face with some of these principalities in the past 2 years that I, like we were talking about, like I told you, that this girl tapped me on the shoulder and gave me a paper that said, this girl that don't speak, she just murmurs, and she's a teenager, and she, I was fixing the drywall in the house that her mother's like, she signed it Persephone, and it said, deity of the underworld, god of metal, and all that. I showed you guys that, I think, right?
Yeah,
I remember you talking about it.
Mother that her mother's like, she keeps finding partially eaten snake carcasses under her bed.
Yeah.
And so that's just So that girl's down here. So even though a lot of our people are in this area where we're at here, just equally as much of the principalities are up in this area too.
Oh,
There's a battle getting ready to go down up here. But not only that, then now I ran into this Panemi and Enoch, the fourth fallen messenger that taught men the ink and the pen and the writing of their thoughts, and putting their thoughts on ink and paper. I just ran into that. I know totally. I knew there's certain things that stand out, and you just scratch your head at it and you go, wow, that's something odd about that. And you don't know until, weeks or days or months or even in this case, 2 years later, it all comes together, because like all these little different pieces are like pink, 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 pink. They're all put in place. You're like, then you read a scripture and go, wow, there's 5 pieces of a puzzle I didn't even know went together, and they all are that.
Yes. Yeah.
So this Panemi is the thoughts in the ink and paper, and bitter and sweet, and totally like there's a girl, she's in a mental institution right now, and she's like 13 years old, and I met her at Tacot 2 years ago, and I saw her going through the bitter and sweet. I didn't know what it was at the time. I just knew it was way like a roller coaster. Yeah. And sure enough, and then I seen her again last year, and she was like, she had a stack of notebooks. She's just writing things all the time, writing, that's the one that she was talking to people in the cafe, explaining how there's this mountain and it has a portal, and the portal only opens one day out of the year. And these people come through the portal on that one day out of the year in that mountain. And she was describing the people down to their hair color and the color of their eyes, and that they talked to her and they told her all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, whoa. Wow. And then here I hear that she's now like, people are worried about her because she got sent to a mental institution or whatever. And then the other day we were reading some stuff, and we were in Enoch, and we were talking about something, and we were looking up the messengers that taught men this and this. And I wasn't looking for that, but there it was, like the messenger that taught the writing of the ink and the pen, and the writing of thought and emotions, and bitter and sweet. And I was like, wow, there's sure enough.
There it is.
Totally that's totally what is running the show, and her and that deal. And
it sounds a lot like the Halloween nonsense that the pagans believe in, that's the one day out of the year that the veil is thinnest. So kind of sounds what you were saying, Brother Tobiah, that she said she was seeing in her mind. It sounds a lot like Halloween and what they believe that Sam Hain does.
Yeah. And you'll find out there are no coincidences. What's going over in one part of the country, you might not connect that to anything else, but it's all coordinated. Under Illuminati, everything is coordinated.
Yeah, and that's the reason they picked that one night out of the year, according to the Wiccans themselves on their own websites. That's why they picked that one day of the year to celebrate Sam Hain, is because the veil, like I was talking about earlier, I think when we were on the recording, I was talking about the veil between heaven and earth, and how after sin there had to be a veil. And, you know, according to Isaiah, Yahuwah is eventually going to rend the heavens, and that veil is going to come down. So these Wiccans, these evil pagans, believe that that's the one day of the year that the veil supposedly is the thinnest and it's easy for demons to come through. And that's why they celebrate it. And,
we need to be crying out for Yahusha. We really do.
Yeah. Yeah, it says when they confess, when my people confess their sins and the sins of their forefathers and accept their punishment and cry out to me, then I shall hear them from the heavens, and then I shall deliver them from what it takes us confessing our own transgression, our own wrongs, and the wrongs of our forefathers, of our as the prayer of Azariah, Hananiah, Azariah, Mishael, he said something about our fathers have transgressed, and you, Yahuwah, are righteous, and you have rightfully brought us into captivity. You've rightly brought punishment upon us for our ways and the ways of our fathers, for we have transgressed all of your instructions and commands, and you are righteous to do so. And then, but they cried out to him, for they acknowledged their wrongdoing and their wrongdoing of their ancestors, like the third and fourth generations. And they accepted the fact that they were being punished, that our Father brought upon them their turmoil that they were going through, distresses that they were going through, and they acknowledged those two things. Those two things needed to be in place. Our Father said in a couple of different places in the Scripture. It says, and they did that there in Daniel chapter 3 in prayer of Azariah, and that's been removed, and I think that's part of the reason why it's been removed, because the witness of that is very powerful to see that you know, it's like a recipe for making bread. You know, you put this together and this together, and then I shall hear you. And because our Father keeps every word He's ever given. He says that when you confess and you accept your punishment, then I shall heal you and deliver you. And but He says our Father shows favor and kindness to thousands, but by no means leaves unpunished. So totally, I mean, look at David. David was, man, look what he went through over one mistake, the big mistake, but it was still, you know, who are we to think that our Father doesn't show partiality. He's going to do David just like He would any of us, and any of us just like He would do David. Yeah. It ain't, you know, and the only reason why Job, He said, you let your servant, or my servant Job, pray for you, but you are not here. It had to do with their obedience then and there. Like, that wasn't partiality. Like, that was just, you know, straight up had to do with, you know, our Father not hearing the prayers of those who
that's a lot of people don't understand that either. Yeah. I know a friend of mine doesn't understand that, and I said, well, you need to read the rest of the book on Job to see.
Yeah, so I got a list of scripture that might help. I had to go seek it out. I had to go, like, why? Because I didn't understand either. You know, I was like, what is that, you know? And it has to do with we know of one or two places or verses that talk about Him not only hearing the prayers of the righteous or whatever. But I made a list of the scripture verses that had to do with Him hearing certain people's prayers and not hearing other people's prayers. And that helped me a lot. And it's going to be, let's see if I got it here still. Notes.
He says, when you seek me with your whole heart, I will hear you.
Yeah, here you go. Okay, so Isaiah 59:2. But your crookednesses have separated you from your Elah, and your sins have hidden his face from hearing you. So our transgressions, he hides his face from hearing our prayers when we're in our transgression. Proverbs 15:8. The slaughtering of the wrong one is an abomination to Yahuwah, but the prayer of the straight is his delight. The sacrifice, the slaughtering, as we would know of, the prayers as incense, certainly go up as incense or whatever. Proverbs 28:9. He who turns away his ear from hearing the Torah, even his prayer is abomination. That one we're pretty familiar with. Most of us are. Now, 1 John 3:22 says, and whatever we ask, we receive from him because we guard his commands and do what is pleasing in his sight. That has to do exactly with what we're talking about, too. Whatever we ask, we receive from him because we guard his commands and do what is pleasing in his sight. John 9:31. And we know that the Most High does not hear sinners. But if anyone fears the Most High and does his desire, he hears him. That's talking exactly about whether our prayers are heard or not also. In Proverbs 15:29, Yahuwah is far from the wrong ones, but he hears the prayer of the righteous.
Yeah.
Let's see here.
And what makes us righteous? When we humble ourselves and confess our sins before him.
Right, that cleanses us, right? Like of our unrighteousness.
Right.
It washes our robes, garments.
But what can we do about our ancestors' sins that we don't even know about?
Okay, yeah, so
You know about.
Okay, so I pulled this up for a brother the other day because we were talking about this maybe a couple months ago even, and this brother, I was reading scripture the other day, and there it was, and I was like, oh wow, okay, and so I sent it to him. Let me see if I'll pull it back up the message, because I'd have a hard time finding it again. Okay. Going to be
And actually, from that same chapter, Proverbs 28, verse 13 of the Septuagint says, he that covers his own wickedness shall not prosper, but he that blames himself shall be loved. So also we're to accept the blame. We're not to pass it on to other people. Oh, you made me sin. Oh, the devil made me do it. No.
That wasn't me.
That's
that
also,
was so-and-so.
and accepting the blame, that's also accepting Yahuwah's punishment.
That's why I brought that up. Yep, to Brother Tobias' point. That's what it means to accept his punishment, is to be like, I messed up. It's all me. I deserve what he's going to give me.
Exactly.
So Leviticus 26, verse 40 through 42. But if they confess their crookedness and the crookedness of their fathers with their trespass in which they trespass against me, and that they have walked contrary to me, and that I also have walked contrary to them, and have brought them into the land of their enemies, if their uncircumcised heart is then humbled, and they accept the punishment of their crookedness, then I shall remember my covenant with Yaakov, and my covenant with Yitzhak, and also remember my covenant with Abraham, and remember the land. So in Daniel chapter 9, verses 4 through 11, it says, and I prayed to Yahuwah, my Elah, and made confession, and said, O Yahuwah, great and awesome El, guarding the covenant and the kindness to those who love him, and to those who guard his commands. We have sinned and did crookedness, and did wrong, and rebelled to turn aside from your commands and from your right ruling. And we have not listened to your servants, the prophets, who spoke in your name to our sovereigns and our heads and our fathers and to all the people of the land. O Yahuwah, to you is the righteousness, and to us the shame of face, as it is to this day, to the men of Yehuda, to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and to Israel, or Yashrael, those near and those far off in the lands in which you have driven them because of their trespasses, which they have trespassed against you. O Master, to us is the shame of face, to our sovereigns, to our heads, and to our fathers, because we have sinned against you. To Yahuwah our Elah are the compassions and forgivenesses. We have rebelled against him, and we have not obeyed the voice of Yahuwah our Elah to walk in his Torah, which he set before us through his servants the prophets. And all Yashrael have transgressed your Torah, and turned aside so as not to obey your voice. So the curse and the oath written in the Torah of Moshe, the servant of the Most High, have been poured out on us, for we have sinned against him. This is one place where Daniel is following through with what is required to be delivered from that which they've been handed over to we read in Leviticus 26 verses 40, 41, and 42. But it's also the same context to what the men in the prayer of Azariah, what his prayer, what he said when he was in the fire. He said basically the same thing, that our fathers have walked contrary to your ways. So it was kind of like this brother and I were talking about, is there a blanket statement to cover our fathers? Is there some way to, because like you said, we don't even know about our fathers, but we do have a clue that like I know that like my grandfather didn't keep the Sabbath day. And even though he liked the Bible and he believes in Messiah, but he don't know the true Messiah, and he didn't, he ate pork and he didn't, I mean, there's a whole lot of ways that, so, I mean, and he participated in, he retired from Amoco Oil or Standard Oil, which is tied to the Rockefellers.
Absolutely.
And that crap. And he was involved in, like he used to, he ran an anhydrous plant where the farm back in the day when the farmer would call the fertilizer guy to come spray their fields, that's what he did. He retired from doing it, had his own plant or whatever. So I remember the day when I was a boy that he came home with the first bottle of spray jug of what you call it, Monsanto weed.
Weed be gone.
Yeah,
Spectricide. Yeah.
Yeah, what do you call that? The stuff popular
Roundup.
Are you talking?
Roundup, yeah, the first jug of Roundup when it first came out. I remember my grandfather coming home with it in a jug with a hose with a little,
Oh boy, nasty stuff.
Nozzle. Yeah, and my grandmother died from glyphosate stuff. Yeah, my grandmother years later, she died from an intestinal cancer and all that crap. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, I can see some things. I mean, I know that my grandfather's father murdered his brother, and that's why they left from Kentucky into Missouri. And my grandfather, his first years of his life in the grade school system here, he went by a different last name because they were hiding out from that whole deal or whatever. And he didn't go by his real last name until he joined the military in World War II. Then he went by his for the first time went by his real last name. But so I know a lot of things, but I really don't. That's just scratching the surface. I mean, how could you know?
Yes.
But so we were talking about how do we confess the truth, because him and I are confessing things to one another about our ways, because in the days, the books will be open. And one of those books is the book of hidden matters. And that book of hidden matters will have everything that's ever been hidden in it. And if it's a secret between Yahuwah and you, or Yahuwah and it's written in that book, whether it be good or bad. That's why it says don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing, because we're storing up for ourselves either reward or punishment, either good or bad. And when they open up the book of hidden matters, so when we confess to one another, as it would say, confessing to one another, we're actually blotting out things from that book so that it can't be in the book of hidden matters anymore. It's now in the light. That's why it says those who seek to save their life shall lose it, and those who are willing to lose their life shall gain it. Is we confess now that was hidden is no longer a hidden matter. It might be grievous and it's shameful, and because we humbled ourselves and bared our shame, now it's not in the hidden book. It's blotted out of the book of hidden matters, and it will not be held against us, because we could be washed and cleansed from it now. But if it's kept hidden, it'll be in that hidden book. And this is the same with don't boast in what you do that is good. Don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing, for truly if you do, you receive your reward now. That's the whole same principle, because if you do something good that only you know that you did, that nobody else knows but you and our Father that you did good, that's going to be in that book of hidden matters that's read from when the day comes, as a good thing, as a reward, the storing up treasure. So we were having a discussion about that several months ago, and it totally blew his mind. When we got off the phone that day, it wasn't like 10 seconds later, the phone rang again. He's like, Tobiah, I got some things to tell you. I was like, all right. We go, let's get it out. And I'm like, don't worry about it. I'm telling you right now, I'm a sinner. I come from a miserable life. So I'm telling you, don't worry about whatever it is. Just know that by letting it out, it's no longer a hidden matter, and it ain't going no farther than me and you. But just the fact that me and you both know about it, it's no longer a hidden matter. You let it go. By letting go of our pride, by letting go and being humble to that level, it only takes two of us confessing to one another, as it would be said. That's what it says in the scripture, and that's what it's about. It's about blotting out transgressions from the book of hidden matters that's going to be opened in the last days. And so he was like, all right, I got to let this go. So we were talking about that, and then he was like, look, the other day, he's like, what about our releasing ourselves from our forefathers? And is there like a blanket statement? And I'm like, that's a good question. So I've been keeping it on the back of my mind, and I ran across the Daniel's prayer right there and the instructions for it in Leviticus 26 there that we read. And then I ran across it the other day when we were looking at the prayer of Azariah, and I was like, wow, there it is again. So, but yeah, it's in there. I think,
in my opinion, there's multiple reasons why they took away the prayer of Azariah.
Right.
I think, in my personal humble opinion, I think, like we were talking about today, who the angel of Yahuwah is, that's mentioned so many times in the Tanakh, and you never see Yahusha pre-incarnate before he takes on flesh mentioned as literally the son of Yahuwah, but you see these titles like the angel of Yahuwah, the word of Yahuwah in the Targum is mentioned a lot more in Genesis and stuff like that. But you don't see it in the Masoretic or the Septuagint. You see this known as the Malik, the angel of Yahuwah, that's separate from the other angels. And in the prayer of Azariah, if you connect that to the next verse in the canonical book of Daniel, you can put together that the angel of Yahuwah that saved them in the furnace is the son of Yahuwah, because Nebuchadnezzar is led by Yahuwah's Ruach to say, this one looks like the son of Alua.
Yes.
He doesn't even know Yahuwah at that point, and yet he's led to say that. He has no idea who the Elohim of Yasharal is, and yet he says this, the extra person in that furnace, he sees him and he says he looks like the son of Alua or Eloah. And so I personally believe that's one of the bigger reasons they took that out, was identifying the Messiah pre-incarnate and showing that everything Yahusha claimed he was in the New Testament you could find in the Tanakh. Everything he claimed to be in, Peter. He asked Kapha, who do you say I am? And he's like, you are the son of Eloah. And he's like, Baruch are you, Simon Bar Yonah, because flesh and blood has not revealed that to you, but my Father who is in heaven. Meaning that they somehow lost track of who this Messiah would be, it seems like. And so it seems like only Yahuwah was allowed to reveal to him, kind of like only Yahuwah revealed it to Nebuchadnezzar in the same type of way, in a different event that Nebuchadnezzar just knew out of nowhere. He's like, wait a minute, that looks like the Son of the Almighty. So it's like, and Nebuchadnezzar wasn't a believer, I don't think, at that point. I mean, after the fiery furnace, he became a believer, it seems like. But during that time, Nebuchadnezzar was an idol worshiper. For him to say that, it's like completely out of his character. It'd be like, how would he know who the Son of the Highest is, Yeah. So, I don't know.
The whole reason they were put in the furnace is because they wouldn't bow down to that idol, that golden statue.
Yeah. And in the prayer of Azariah, it literally says the angel of Yahuwah rescued them. That he was the one, he was the extra person.
That was Yahusha.
Yeah, it was Yahusha in there before he took on flesh. So I've come to that realization that's who he was, who he was known as in the Tanakh, in our modern versions of the Tanakh before he took on flesh. He was always given that title of the Malach of Yahuwah. And he's the one that visited Hagar. And actually in the Targum today in our study, we saw that in the Targum version of Genesis 16 and 17, he's actually called the angel of the covenant. And which you can find in Malachi 3:1 in the Septuagint.
Called the word of Yahuwah.
Yeah, the word of Yahuwah is mentioned in the Targum so many times as a person, as a literal being, not just his utterance, but an actual being, person that was in the garden walking in the cool of the day. I think the Masoretic says that Elohim was walking in the cool of the day. So we're with our pre-biased minds, we're already thinking that it's referring to the Father. But in the Targum, it says the word of Yahuwah was walking in the cool of the day. So I think there's many reasons these apocryphal books are taken out. It's many ways to stop the link between the Tanakh and the Brit Hadashah, to take away the importance of keeping the Torah. For many, many, many reasons, those books are taken out. I think another reason, too, it was prophecy for that to happen. In 4th Ezra, it says that only certain books that Ezra wrote would be released to the public. And Yahuwah told him to put aside the other 70. He told him, he's like, listen, you're gonna hide these books. You're not gonna release them to the public. And so we know for a fact, according to that prophecy, there's a bunch of books that have not been released to the public. Even though the 15 books of the Apocrypha have been released to the public, they were put away. They were hidden after released. They were taken away for whatever reason. For some reason, Yahuwah wanted them to be put away. And the word apocrypha actually means hidden. That's literally what the name apocrypha means. So I think it was Yahuwah's will for that to happen. For whatever
be revealed in these days.
But yeah, the prayer of Azariah, I love it. I love little portions like that have so much meat in it. That Psalms 151 is another really underrated psalm. It talks about David's journey, how he was chosen by Yahuwah above his brothers. And I think, let me see if I can find it here from eSword. Should be on my Bretons on the eSword. See here, Psalms. Yeah, they have it in blue here. There we go. Psalm is a genuine one of David, though supernumerary, composed when he fought in single combat with Goliath. I was small among my brothers, the youngest in my father's house. And I think that's prophetic too, because in Micah 5:2, Yahusha is supposed to be, of a clan of Yehuda that's the smallest house, basically. You, Bethlehem, Ephrathah, even though you're small in number, the many houses of Yehuda and all that. So I think there's a paradigm between David and Yahusha in this aspect even. I was small among my brothers, youngest in my father's house. I tended my father's sheep. My hands formed a musical instrument, and my fingers tuned a psaltery. Who shall tell my master? Yahuwah himself. He himself hears. And here we go. Look at this. He sent forth his angel and took me from my father's house, and he anointed me with the oil of his anointing. This would be cool if this is talking about the angel of Yahuwah. That would be cool. Yahusha anointing King David. Like that would be that would be kind of cool. I don't know if it is because it just says his angel, his messenger, but it would be kind of cool if it was. Because Yahusha himself anointing David, that'd be pretty cool. My brothers were handsome and tall, but Yahuwah did not take pleasure in them. I went forth to meet the Philistine, and he cursed me by his idols. But I drew his own sword, and I beheaded him, and removed reproach from the children of Yashar'al. And that's part of the Genesis 3 prophecy. It says he would crush his head. So the seed of the woman, seed of Messiah, crushing the head of the serpent, the seed of the serpent, the Nephilim, Goliath. So it's kind of like a foreshadowing there. He beheaded the head of Goliath. And so eventually, Yahusha does that.
You brought up he's sending his messenger.
Yeah.
I learned something new today pertaining to that, and we're reading a portion as a group.
Mm-hmm.
Where's it at here? It's in, let's see here. We were in Exodus 3.
Mm-hmm. Let's see here.
And it was in particular where the mother of Moshe's children circumcised one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Where's that at here? And
she gets mad at Moshe.
Exodus 4, verse 20. Okay, yeah. So here we go. I was looking for this before, and I come up with 422. Our father told Moshe, he said to tell Pharaoh that Yashrael is my son, my firstborn son. So that's a big deal right there. That Yashrael is the firstborn son, because that basically is alluding to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then, but right after that, it says, verse 24. So Exodus 4:24, it came to be on the way, in the lodging place, that Yahuwah met him and sought to kill him. Now that's what our ISR says. Now some translations say that a messenger sought to kill him. Some places say Yahuwah sought to kill him. But in the
Septuagint says the angel of Yahuwah.
Right. In Septuagint, it says the messenger or the angel of Yahuwah was sent to kill him. And so our brother was wanting to know, kill who? Was it Moshe or the child? Because Sephora took a sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her son and threw it at Moshe's feet and said, "You are indeed a bridegroom of blood to me." So he let him go. Then she said, "You are a bridegroom of blood because of the circumcision."
Mm-hmm.
And then Yahuwah said to Aaron, "Go meet Moshe in the wilderness." Now, that particular text is in much greater detail in Jasher, in chapter 79.
Mm.
And in chapter 79, and if you look at it in the Septuagint, it doesn't say anything about her saying that he's a bridegroom of blood. Right?
Yeah.
So what's missing? Okay, so I think that bridegroom of blood statement is misinterpreted.
Yeah.
I think it's talking about the covenant of circumcision, and I think the bridegroom is misinterpreted from covenant, because here's what it says in Jasher, chapter 79, verse 7. And Moshe hearkened to all that the Most High had commanded him, and he returned to his father-in-law and told him the thing. And Reuel said to him, "Go in peace." And Moshe rose up to go to Egypt, and he took his wife and sons with him. And he was at an inn in the road, and an angel of the Most High came down and sought an occasion against him. And he desired to kill him on account of his firstborn son, because he had not circumcised him, and had transgressed the covenant which the Most High had made with Abraham. For Moshe had hearkened to the words of his father-in-law, which he had spoken to him not to circumcise his firstborn son. Therefore he circumcised him not. And Zipporah saw the messenger of the Most High seeking an occasion against Moshe, and she knew that this thing was owing to his not having circumcised her son Gershom. And Zipporah hastened and took of the sharp rock stones that were there, and she circumcised her son and delivered her husband and her son from the hand of the messenger of Yahuwah. That's what Jasher has to say about it. Now, if you read it in a Septuagint, do you have a Septuagint handy there, brother? Can you read to us Exodus 4, verses 24, 25, and 26.
Okay. And it came to pass that the angel of Yahuwah met him by the way in the inn, and sought to slay him. And Zipporah, having taken a stone, cut off the foreskin of her son, so that perfectly blends with the Jasher there, and fell at his feet and said, "The blood of the circumcision of my son is staunched." And he departed from him, because she said, "The blood of the circumcision of my son is staunched."
Yeah, so basically she declared to the messenger that he no longer has a right to come at them because the transgression is covered. She covered basically that transgression, and she was declaring. She wasn't speaking derogatory to her husband, to her headship. She wasn't snarling at him, and because really that's not even what her, so the Masoretic is falsely proclaiming to us that she said some nasty words to her husband. She didn't. Yeah. She was declaring about the covenant, the blood of the covenant of circumcision, to the messenger, saying that she has, that's no longer against them, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, the Masoretic does that a lot. The Masoretic tries to make it almost feminizes the text sometimes, especially when you look at Proverbs 31, where it talks about let a woman be praised for fearing the Father, rather than the Septuagint version of Proverbs 31:30, which says, let me see, let me read it from here because I don't remember what it.
Anybody hear that awful music in the background but me?
No, it's pretty quiet from your side, actually.
Thankfully, we don't hear it.
Let's see here. Charm recalls a woman's beauty is vain.
Plug it in like earphones.
Where it is a wise woman that is Baruch, and let her praise the fear of Yahuwah. Rather than Yep.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there's a huge difference there between the woman being praised and praising the fear of the Father.
Well, I think that Sephora was walking in righteousness at this point in this text, because she observed and took notice of the messenger that Yahuwah, that there was an occasion for a messenger of Yahuwah to be against them, like there was a messenger against Saul when he was in the wrong in his heart, right? and things that weren't being right. I mean, they only got to have permission from our Father, just like Job. They got to have permission to pull stuff on us, whether it be that our Father and the accuser, the adversary said, "Oh yeah, he or she's not so great as you think she is." Watch what happens if you put them through some tests. Watch what happens if you put them in a tight spot. They'll turn their back on you and not serve you. And so it could be as simple as that, or we could have done something wrong and we brought it upon ourselves, right? But regardless, she was able to see. Her eyes were open to see, and she, her action, she shema. Her actions were righteous. She took and made things right. So I see her as being a righteous woman, and in the whole matter, I don't see anywhere where. But the enemy would be like him to want to make her look like a snarl-toothed hag that was ragging out on her husband. But what does the righteous woman do in the case of her husband? It says that a righteous woman in the book of Timothy, in 1 Peter chapter 3, says, "In the same way, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that if any are disobedient to the word," which right here we have. Moshe did not obey the instruction. He was disobedient to the word. That they, the husband, without a word, in other words, the woman doesn't go nagging any, without a word, might be won over. In other words, she finds favor in her husband's eyes by the behavior of their wives, as in her actions cause him to favor her, to find favor. Having seen your blameless behavior in fear. So she, in fear of the word of the Most High, in fear as in work out your salvation in fear and trembling, and as in, those who fear him, she feared the Most High. She knew that this was a matter of not walking in the ways, she examined the matter like, oh my gosh, this is something bad that's come upon us. And she considered, what could we have done that wouldn't be favorable in our Father's eyes? Just like Jacob considered, what could I do when he was thinking he was going to lose Benjamin. They kept Simon down there in prison, and they want to take Benjamin, his last son by Rahel, the only brother of Joseph, the youngest of his house, the child of his old age, right? And he considered and thought it could be that we are perceived as thieves because of the silver in their sacks, and it could be that I have let my flock or my herd or those of my house go to graze on the neighbor's grain because a neighbor's field, because my fields are bare. Well, the right rulings on that are you should repay double, and if your flock or your herd, Exodus 22, graze in your neighbor's field because your fields are bare, then you shall certainly repay from the choicest of what you do have. And he told them, take double silver in your sacks, and take some of the choicest of our nuts and dates and almonds and whatnot for the man when you go down there. Those are the two things that he knew. If I'm wrong in our Father's eyes, if my house is wrong, this is the right ruling concerning it. She knew more simpler than that they didn't circumcise their son, so she went and made it right. And I don't think she would have messed it all up by running her mouth after it was all over and said and done, and that would have found great favor. How much do you think Moshe would have had favor for being thankful for his wife, his Isha, that would found great favor in his eyes, because she made up for somewhere that he was lacking, that he didn't do his part of or whatever. And I think the enemy twisted up the words to make it look like she wasn't a good woman. I've seen this done to the women in scriptures, righteous women in scriptures, a couple different times, where it appears like, for instance, Job. Scripture tells us that Job's wife told him to curse the Most High and die. That word right there is not curse, it's Baruch. It says that she told him to Baruch the Most High. And out of all the family that he had that was killed, she wasn't. His sons and daughters that were celebrating their own days, they were killed. She wasn't killed. And I think the enemy loves making her look like a no good wife. or why would, you know, what a wife to say something like that, you know, it automatically puts her in a bad light when she wasn't. She totally, the scripture, the text of Masoretic flat out says Baruch. That she says to Baruch, the Most High. And so I've seen this done in several places in the text where it tries to make these women look bad, or appears that they were, it puts them in a negative light when they totally were actually very, very, very much in a righteous light. And it just totally appears that they weren't, but
that would definitely be in Satan's character, you know, false accuser. Accuser of the brethren, to make someone that's actually righteous in Yahuwah's eyes as wicked. You know that. And then, what does it say? Woe unto them that takes evil as Tob and Tob as evil. So that seems to be Satan's MO. Turn something that's evil into Tob, and something that's actually joyful in Yahuwah's eyes into evil.
It fits. Again, and we've been lied about everything.
What I find interesting is the difference of the angel of Yahuwah in Septuagint versus Yahuwah being the one that's going there in the Masoretic, which kind blends Jasher with the Septuagint, technically.
Jasher, that's what I found, was that Jasher supports the Septuagint and vice versa, but it still has a little bit more information than the Septuagint had in it. But they both agree on the level about that messenger, and they both agree on the fact that she didn't say, you know, a snarl tooth, or she didn't mock him or whatever after it was done. So yeah.
I wonder how the Targum has that situation. I'm kind of curious, because maybe I know the Targum of Jonathan sometimes has stuff that Jasher does. Sometimes it's almost like verbatim. The Targum of Jonathan. Let me see here. I remember looking at this earlier. The Targum of Jonathan even gives the names of the angels that went into the second incursion that we don't see in the Masoretic text. So it's kind of interesting. Let me see here. Let's go back to Exodus here. Yeah, Tov Roses.
And Uriel.
Yeah, Semyaza. Yeah, is the one. Yeah, and Uziel, not Uriel. Uriel's actually the good one.
Uziel.
Yeah, Uziel is the bad part of the Watchers. Uriel. Yeah, Uriel is actually Michael's buddy, the one that was shivering and quaking, seeing the judgment of the Watchers. Yeah. Let's see here. Where is it? Exodus 4:22 or 24 starts at. Let's see. Yep, angel of Yahuwah. The angel of Yahuwah. But it was on the way in the place of lodging that the angel of Yahuwah met him and sought to kill him, because Gershom, his son, had not been circumcised, inasmuch as Jethro, his father-in-law, had not permitted him to circumcise him. Oh!
So there it even gets more, because the Septuagint doesn't even mention about his father-in-law suggesting that he not circumcise him, but Yasher does.
I'm convinced that Jonathan, this Jonathan guy, was using the Jasher accounts to combine with the text, whatever text he was using for the Aramaic targums, because it's almost verbatim in certain verses where Jasher mentions the same thing almost. See here, and Zipporah took a stone and circumcised the foreskin of Gershom, his son, and brought the severed part to the feet of the angel, the destroyer. Hold on.
See, so the throwing it at the feet wasn't at Moshe's feet. This was about, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and maybe this is the same angel that was striking the houses that didn't have the blood on the doorpost. Because doesn't it talk about the destroyer? Yeah. I will send the destroyer that don't have the blood on the doorpost. Yeah. So Yahusha might have been the one that was actually doing that, possibly. So let's see here, and destroying angel desisted from him, so that Zipporah gave thanks and said, "How lovely is the blood of this circumcision that has delivered my husband from the angel of destruction." Interesting. Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it said the husband sought to circumcise, but the father-in-law obstructed him. And now let this blood of circumcision atone for my husband. Now that definitely connects to Yahusha there.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. But yeah. So this is the targum of Pseudo Jonathan that has that added information. He has a lot of added information. Like, case in point here, we were talking about Deuteronomy 32:8 before. When the Most High made allotment of the world unto the nations, he preceded the sons of Noah. So it lets you know this is the timeline of right after the flood. In separation of the writings and languages of the children of men. When were the languages given? Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
Tower. Yeah.
At the time of the division, he cast the lot among the 70 angels, the princes of the nations, with whom is the revelation to oversee the city. Even at that time, he established the limits of the nations according to the sum of the number of the 70 beings of Yashar'al who went down into Egypt. So you kind of see like a comparison between the 70 principalities and eventually, you know, the beings of the sons of Yashar'al that went into Egypt will eventually inherit the nations. That's kind of what I see from there, is a comparison between the 70 angels and the 70 beings of Yashar'al at that point that went down into Egypt. So eventually they would inherit the nations, which is kind of interesting. Whoa, hold on. Gabriel's mentioned down here. Huh? Okay. And when the set-apart people fell to the lot of Yahuwah, of all the world, Michael opened his lips and said, "Let the toe portion of the name of Yahuwah's word be with him." Gabriel opened his lips with thanksgiving and said, "Let the house of Yaakov be the lot of his inheritance." Wow. That's interesting. He found them dwelling in the wilderness, in the solitude place of the howling demons and thorns, the place of thirsting. He overspread them with his 7 esteemed or magnificent clouds. He taught them his law. He kept them as the majesty keeps the apple of his eye, as an eagle stirs up and cares for his nest and hovers over his young. So did his magnificence stir up the tents of Yashar'al, and the shadow of his esteem or majesty overspread them. And as an eagle outstretches his wings over his young ones, bears them and carries them upon his wings, so he bears them and carries them and made them dwell upon the strong places of the land of Yashar'al. And here we go. Here's Yahusha mentioned again here. The word of Yahuwah made them to dwell in his land, nor suffered any among them to be followers of strange worship. So now Yahusha is saying the land is the word of Yahuwah's. Interesting. He made them to dwell in the strong places of the land of Yashar'al, and gave them to eat of the tobli produce of his field, and nourished them with the honey of its fruits, which grow even upon the rocks with the oil of its olive trees. Wow. And from branches out of the rocks. He gave them rich butter of kine from the spoil of their kings, and the fat of the firstlings of sheep from the prey of their sultans, with the choice rams and goats of the flock of Mathan. Moshe the prophet said, "If the people of Yashar'al will observe the precepts of the law, it is foretold that their wheat granary shall be like the kidneys of oxen, and that from one bunch of grapes shall come forth a core of red wine." Wow. But the house of Yashar'al grew rich and wicked. They prospered and possessed wealth, and forsook the worship of Alua, who created them, and provoked him to anger who redeemed them. See, this is another thing I like about the Targum is the phrase Eloah or Alua, however you want to pronounce it, is mentioned a lot more than the Masoretic text or the Septuagint. They moved him to jealousy with strange worship. By their abominations they made him angry. They sacrificed to idols resembling devils. Well, that makes a lot more sense why Paul says what the nations worship, they worship the demons. That kind of makes a little bit more sense now. So these graven images literally resemble demons. That's kind of interesting. In whom there is no prophet, to idols which they had not known, new mighty ones lately made. Makes sense because, you know, there's scriptures that talk about you sacrificed to mighty ones that neither your fathers knew. So that's kind of interesting. Which your fathers, it says it right here, which your fathers had nothing to do with, basically. But the adorable, strong one who created you, you have forgotten. Of the word of Alua, who strengthened you, so often you have been forgetful. Wow. The word of Alua, or the word of Eloah, who strengthened you, so often you have been forgetful. Wow.
That sounds like
Yahusha. Yeah, that's Yahusha being spoken of right there. He's the one that strengthened them, and they forgot him. Wow. And when it was
always forgetting.
That's crazy. There's so much added stuff in these targums. That's why I really like the targums. It gives you more context, like Jasher. When it was manifest before Yahuwah, he was angry, provoked thereby his beloved children, who were called upon his name, son and daughters. And he said, I will take away from them the favor of my countenance. It will be seen that will be the end, for they are a perverse generation. Maybe this is where Yahusha gets it from. Because there's a lot of times in the Brit Hadashah, he mentions the perverse generation. I think even Peter says it in one verse. He talks about, save yourselves from this perverse and wicked generation. That's kind of interesting. They have made me jealous by that which is not mighty one, or deity. They have angered me by their vanities. I also will provoke them to jealousy by people which has not been a people. Wow. This directly correlates with Hosea. Wow. I will... Does it say that in the Masoretic? I will provoke them to jealousy. I think it does, but I don't think it says it that way. It's kind of more connected to Hosea the way the Targum reads it.
By a people that has not been a people.
Yeah.
Now, you know, we often talk about the UN, neither united nor nations. Interesting. I don't know.
Let's see here. 32:21. Well, I think a people that's not been a people is talking about the Gentiles, about the grafted in.
The firstborn was Lo Ami.
See here.
People.
Yeah. I will make them jealous by those who are no people. Oh, wow. The Masoretic text makes it very generalized by no people. This is saying not a people, not been a people, which goes with Hosea talking about you shall be called sons of the living Elohim. And there's a prophecy there in the book of Hosea. I'm trying to find it that directly correlates with this. But I think it's talking about the wild branches of Romans 11 when he's talking about I will provoke them to anger by a people that have not been a people, like talking about the Gentile believers that are grafted in. They would, because think about it. Paul says in Romans, I am spreading the glad tidings that some of my own brothers would be provoked to jealousy. So I think that's why I've always believed it's talking about the wild branches as a people that are not a people, and that they would become part of his people, basically. They, in that day, let me look up this verse real quick. In that day, they shall be called sons of the living, of the living. And I might even add that as a note to my Kindle right on the side here. Yeah, Romans 9:26. Paul quotes Hosea 1:10 in Romans 9:26. Let's see, it says, let me go to a more literal translation here, all right? Yet the number of the children of Yashar'al shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. And it shall come to pass in the place where it was said to them, you are not my people. There it shall be said, you are the sons of the living Elohim. But where does it talk about provoking to jealousy? That's what I would like to look up, that phrase, provoking jealousy, because that's mentioned a bunch of times. I will provoke them. I think I'm going to still write that as a note, though, a correlation to Deuteronomy 32:21. I'm just going to add a note of Hosea 1:10, I think it is. And because it seems like it's talking about the same prophecy. 1:10 and Romans 9:26. Just have that as a note to my highlight there. There we go. So now that will be there. Okay, let's look up. I will provoke them. Oh, you know what I'm thinking about? The other one that says, I will provoke them with a foolish nation. That's the one I was thinking of. I will provoke them with a foolish nation, which is kind of similar to Deuteronomy 32:21. See here. Oh, okay. Okay, the Deuteronomy 32:21 of the Masoretics says a foolish nation. That's why I got confused. Okay. See here. Yeah, the NLT gets it really, really specific. They said, they have roused my jealousy by worshiping things that are not Elohim. They have provoked my anger with their useless idols. Now I will rouse their jealousy through people who are not even a people. I will provoke their anger through the foolish Gentiles. Wow, okay. They take some liberties with that verse. They kind of add a little bit there with the NLT. But yeah, you get the idea. Deuteronomy 32:21 is basically, wow, this is interesting. The Targum of Jonathan says here, by the foolish Babylonian people, I will provoke them. What? Whoa, what? Is this talking about the Daniel? This might have been a prophecy about Daniel's time. That'd be interesting, because technically Nebuchadnezzar became a believer. Technically, I wouldn't be. That could be possible. I think though that's weird though. The Babylonian people, I will prove. Well, that's definitely a foolish nation. So I can kind of see that being true.
You think it's talking about today?
Yeah, well, we're in Babylon, so
Yeah.
So,
Makes me wonder about the UN still.
Well, it's funny too. Isn't there a lot more believers coming out from Iraq now? Aren't there a lot more people believing in the Bible in the Middle East now around that area? So I kind of find that interesting. Even if you take it literally. Because Iraq is modern day Babylon, so it's kind of interesting. Yeah. See here, for an east wind strong as fire shall go out before me. It shall consume the land with its produce and set the fountains of the mountains in flame. And when they dwell in Babel, they will serve their idols. Wow, this is stuff you do not get in the other versions of Genesis and the Torah. He's telling you that they're going to be serving their false mighty one in Babylon. Wow. I will make them go into captivity in Media, the King Darius, the Media Persians. Wow. In Elam, in the captivity of Babel, the house of Agag, who are like demons gaping with famine. Wow, that's some strong language there. And to corpses devoured by birds, and to, here we go, evil spirits of the noon, to Lilin. I wonder who that's talking about. Maybe Lilith. Lilith. And to spirits big with evil, and Javane, the Greeks, bite with their teeth like wild beasts, I will set against them, and will shake them by the hand of the Assyrians, venomous as basilisks. The serpents of the dust. Yeah, basilisk basically is a mythological giant snake dragon creature, like a huge. I remember when I was watching Harry Potter back in the day, they had a basilisk in one of the Harry Potter movies. It's like a giant snake. Yeah. Let's see here, basilisks, the serpents of the dust. People who will come from beyond the land of Yashrael, who shall consume them with the stroke of the sword. Those who are left in the land of Yashrael will I throw into the terror of death. In the chambers here and there where they sleep, their young men shall perish, their maidens, their sucklings with their men and their elders. I have spoken in my word to withhold from them my set-apart spirit. I will make them weak as a man who reaps his field leaves but one upon the ground. So will I abolish their memory from the book of the genealogy of mankind. Wow. But for the wrath of the enemy, and that their oppressors would esteem themselves against me and say, our hand has taken vengeance upon our adversaries, and all this has not been decreed by Yahuwah. For they are a people lost to toad counsel and void of understanding. Oh, that they were intelligent in the law. What? That might be something to highlight there. Oh, that they were intelligent in the law and that they understood what they will become in their latter end. Wow. How will one foe pursue 1,000 of them who put 10,000 of them to flight? Wow, interesting. Unless he who is their strength deliver them, and Yahuwah avenge them. For the idols of the Gentiles are not as he who is the strength of Yasharal. For the strength of Yasharal, when they have sinned, brings punishment upon them. But when they stretch forth their hands in prayer, he answers and delivers them. But the idols of the peoples and strange worships are of no use. But because we have provoked him and have not returned to his service, our adversaries are our witnesses and our judges. For the works of this people are like the works of the people of Sodom, and their evil counts are like those people of Gomorrah. Hold on, whoa! This is like, this is reminding me of the book of Jeremiah. This is interesting. There's no way it says that in the Masoretic. This is interesting. So this is like connecting like the prophets together in that version of Deuteronomy. Kind of interesting. Let me see here. What does Deuteronomy 32 say in the Masoretic? Oh, okay. No, it does. Okay. For the vine is the vine of Sodom. The vine? Oh my goodness. For their vine is the vine of Sodom, and the fields of Gomorrah, their grapes are grapes of gall. Their clusters are bitter. That's really generalized. The Targum says, for the works of the people, of this people are like the works of the people of Sodom, and their evil counsels are like those of the people of Gomorrah. Their wicked thoughts are as serpents' heads. Bitter thereof to them is their punishment, which makes desolate. Wow, that's different. Yeah. So the Masoretes like completely generalized that verse in the Masoretic text of Deuteronomy 32:32. Wow. Behold, as the bitterness of serpents when they come forth from their wines, so shall be the bitter cup of the curse which they are to drink in the day of their punishment. and cruel as the head of asps. Are not their secret works all known before me? Sealed and laid up are they in my treasury? Vengeance lies before me, and I will repay them at the time when their foot shall move to the captivity, for the day of their destruction is coming near, an evil which is prepared for them to make haste. This is so weird. Like this like completely connects to Daniel in this version. It's almost like the Masoretes messed this up, so we couldn't connect the Torah to the prophets. So like
They're good at that.
Like they completely made everything vague, so we can't connect the Torah and the prophets together. Because that doesn't read like that in the Masoretic text of that verse. It says, "To me belongs vengeance and repayment. Their foot shall slide in due time, for the day of their calamity is at hand, and the things that shall come upon them make haste," which is very vague.
That sounds like Jesuits.
For the word of Yahuwah judges in his mercy, the judgment of his people Yashrael. For the evil he has appointed upon his servants, there shall be repentance before him. For he knows that in the time when they have sinned, the stroke of their enemies will be heavy upon them, and help has passed away from their hands. And the trustworthy will have failed with their tob works and be scattered and forsaken. Wow. Okay, yeah, that's a lot different from the Masoretic text.
A lot different.
What the heck? It's like they really tried to hide the fact that Yahuwah prophesied about Babylon way, way, way in the beginning of the book.
Messy rhetoric.
And the enemy will say, "Where is the fear of Yasharal, their strength in whom they confided? Who ate the fat of their sacrifices, drank the wine of their libations? Let him now rise up and help you. Let him shield you by his word. When the word of Yahuwah shall reveal himself," you might want to highlight that, "shall reveal himself to redeem his people, he will say to all the nations, Behold now, I am he who am and was and will be, and there's no other Elohim besides me. I, in my word, kill and make alive. I smite the people of the Beth Yasharal, and I will heal them at the end of days, and there will be none who can deliver." Whoa! I feel like I'm reading something from the Book of Enoch or something. Like, this is crazy. It's talking about like,
Baruch.
Yeah, like, whoa. Okay, that reminds me of, where is it that it talks about that? I think Hosea actually talks about that he strikes and heals his people. Let me see here. I forget which chapter in Hosea it is, but it talks about, let us turn back to Yahuwah. He strikes us. Yeah, where is that? I feel like, let's see here, at the beginning of the word, said, "Go take yourself a wife." No. I think it's like Hosea 3 or 4. Yeah, let's see here, the confidence of curse in the line. Let's see here. 15 days. Yeah, it's something that Hosea talks about, on the third day he will raise us up. That connects to Yahusha, and I forget where it is in Hosea.
Hosea 6.
Hosea 6, yeah. Thank you, Brother Tobiah. I kept drawing blanks there. Let's see here.
First verse. First one.
"In their affliction they will seek me early. saying, "Let us go and return to Yahuwah our Elohim, for he has torn and will heal us. He will smite and bind us up." That's Hosea 6:1 of the Septuagint. After
Come,
2
let us turn
days,
back to Yahuwah. For he has torn, but he does heal us. He has stricken, but he binds us up.
After 2 days, he
He
shall
will heal
revive us.
Mhm.
On the third day, he shall raise us up so that we live before him.
It's interesting that instead of after the third day, the Septuagint says, "In the third day we shall arise and live before him." 3 days and 3 nights, maybe?
Yeah.
So that in the third day means like literally on it, not after it. So
Yeah. On the third day.
we shall arise and live before him. So this is talking about the resurrection. And shall know him. Wow. Yeah, that's the Septuagint there in verse 2. And shall know him.
And
That's
whose bodies are on the streets of Jerusalem for 3 days?
What is it? The 2 witnesses?
Yes, the 2 witnesses.
Interesting.
And I've always thought that when they're resurrected, that's the first resurrection.
Absolutely.
He's not going to resurrect them by themselves. He's taking us all up.
Let's see, Hosea
144,000.
Hosea 6:1-2. I'm going to put on a note here after Deuteronomy 32:39 of the Targum. I'm going to put a little note here that says CLXX. Enter. Now I can look back to that. This is what I mean by the Septuagint and the Targums are actually blending together with the extra biblical books.
Give you more understanding.
The Masoretic text is the problem. That's the problem. That's why people say, "Oh, there's contradictions with Enoch and Joshua and Jubilees." Yeah, if you use the Masoretic text, there's contradictions. Yeah, if you have a general modernized Bible, then yeah. But yeah, even with the new moon stuff, the only contradiction you can come with which new moon is really the new moon. The only contradiction there is if you use the Masoretic text of Psalms 81. If you use any other version of Psalms 81, it doesn't contradict Enoch at all. So that's another problem. When you look at the calendar situation, the Masoretic text funkies a lot of stuff up with that too. But yeah. See here. We shall find him ready as the morning. Okay, let's see here. So is there anything else important in Deuteronomy 32 here? From my hand, Gog and his armies whom I have permitted to make war against them. Now this is interesting. So this goes to Ezekiel here. Wow, there's a connection here with Ezekiel. I have lifted up my hand with an oath to heaven, and have said, as I exist, I will not abolish my oath forever. If I whet my sword as lightning, it will prevail in the judgment of my hand. I will return retribution on them who afflict my people, and repay to their enemies the hire of their wickedness. I will make I will make my arrows drunk with the blood of their slain, and the captivity of their armies shall be punishment of my people's foes. I will make my arrows drunk with their blood. My sword shall consume their flesh with the blood of the destroyers of my people, their captives and their chieftains of their armies. Rejoice, ye heavens, ye people of Beth Yasharal, for the blood of his servants which was shed, he has avenged. What? This is like connecting Revelations now. The blood of his servants which was shed, he has avenged. Yeah, that's like almost verbatim with Revelations. When it talks about, avenge the, when are you, O Yahuwah, gonna avenge us? When the martyrs cry out to him. That's kind of interesting. He has kept and returned righteous vengeance upon his adversaries, and by his word he will make atonement for his land. Wow. See here. By his word he will make atonement for his land and for his people. Wow. See here. And speaking all these words of Yashar'al, and said to them, apply your heart to all the words which I bear witness to you this day. You may dictate them to your children, so that they may observe and do all the words of this law. For there is no vain word in the law, unless to them who transgress it. For it is your life, and by this word you will prolong days upon the land that you pass over Jordan to inherit. And Yahuwah spake with Moshe on the 7th of the month Adar. Interesting. So they actually put the name of a month there. On the same day, saying, it was when the word of Yahuwah had said to him, go up to this mountain, Ebrei, the mountain of Nebo. And he thought in his heart and said, perhaps this upgoing will be like that to Mount Sinai. And he said, I will go and set apart the people. But the word of Yahuwah said to him, not so at all, but go thou up and view the land of Canaan, which I have given to the children of Yashar'al for an inheritance. And you shall sleep in the mountain to which you go up, and be gathered to the people, even you, as Aharon your brother has slept in the mountain of Omanos, and has been gathered unto his people. Moshe at once opened his mouth in prayer and said, Yahuwah of all the world, I entreat that I may not be as a man who had only one son, who being in captivity he went and redeemed him with great price. He taught him wisdom and art, and espoused him to a wife, planted for him a royal bower, builded him a marriage house, prepared for him the bed, invited his companions, baked his bread, slew his victims, and mixed his wine. Yet when the time came for his son to make glad with his wife, and the guests were about to set apart the feast, then was that man required to go to the house of judgment before the king, and be punished with the judgment of death. Neither would the delay to execute his sentence, that he might see the happiness of his son. So I have labored for this people. I have led them by your word out of Egypt, out of Mitzrayim, and built for this people. I have taught them your law, built for them the tabernacle to your name. But now that the time has come to pass the Jordan, I am punished with death. Let it please you to withhold from me this sentence until I have passed the Jordan to see the Tob of Yashar'al before I die. And then it says, Yahuwah the world answered him and said, because you did prevaricate with my word in the midst of the children of Yashar'al, at the waters of contention, at Rechem in the desert of Zin, and did not set apart me among them. So, wow, this lets you know that Yahushua is the rock. Wow. So it talks about that he prevaricated with the word of Yahuwah. So that's interesting. And did not set apart me among them. Therefore you may look over against it, but shall not enter into the land that I give unto the children of Yashar'al. And this is the order of the benedictions of wherewith Moshe the prophet, Baruch, the children of Yashar'al before he died. And he said, Yahuwah was revealed at Sinai to give the law unto his people of Beth Yashar'al. And the splendor of the esteem of his majesty arose from Gibal to give itself to the sons of Esau. Interesting. But they received it not. Well, here's a little bit of added information that we don't get. Mm-hmm. They did not receive Yahuwah, so they didn't get the inheritance. That's kind of interesting. Hold on, where was I at? Yeah, but they received it not. Okay, let me highlight that. It shined forth in majesty and steam from Mount Paran to give itself to the sons of Ishmael, but they received it not. It returned and revealed itself and set apartness unto his people of Beth Yashar'al, and with him 10,000 times 10,000 set apart angels. Wow. He wrote with his own right hand and gave them his law and his commandments out of the flaming fire. Wow. That's interesting. So you have a little bit of added information here about 10,000 of his messengers being with him. And whatever has befallen to the nations because he loved his people of Beth Yashar'al, and all them he has called to be set apart ones, to stand in his set apart place when they observed the precepts of the law. They were conducted at the foot of your esteemed cloud. They rested and encamped according to the dictate of the word. The sons of Yashar'al said, Moshe commanded us the law and gave it for an heritage to the tribes of Jacob, and he was king in Yashar'al. When the chiefs of the people were gathered together and the tribes of Yashar'al were obedient to him, let Reuben live in this world, nor die the second death, which the wicked in the world to come. Wow, there's a lot of added stuff here. Wow. And let his youths be numbered with the young men of his brothers of Beth Yashar'al. This is interesting. This is the benediction of the tribe of Yehuda. Okay, Simeon, thus he spake, receive. So yeah, this would be interesting. I think eventually I would like to do a complete targum study with our group, just reading through the targum. And there's just so much stuff in this. It's almost like a whole nother Torah. It's like a whole nother book. It has stuff that, so far I see a lot of connections with the prophets and Hosea that we don't get in our regular versions of the Torah. But, all right, I'm going to let everyone go. I know it's getting late. Let's say a closing prayer here.
Yeah, that I want to say this, that message that you gave Tobiah earlier should be recorded, and did not listen to a preacher that preaches the smooth things, but the things we don't want to hear. You were going on and on, convicting.
It says it even through just the writ itself. It talks about those who fear him. That's where our safety is going to be, among those who fear him, because man, the lawlessness is pervasive and very much everywhere, and we ain't gonna be very popular at all on any good light by telling people what they need to be being told. All the prophets ever were persecuted for speaking what they're supposed to be speaking, because Yahuwah put it upon their spirit to do so. It's what they say, shit or get off the pot. That's the season we're in.
Because what you spoke was the absolute truth, and people need to hear it.
Yeah.
Nobody's giving that message.
It ain't a popular message.
No, but it's the message everyone needs to hear.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So I'm glad Sister Sadie actually told me to start recording when Brother Tobias starting to get on a roll. So I tried to record pretty much most of what we went through. All of the Targum that we were just reading through has been recorded. So I'm trying to figure what would be the best name for what we went through, because we went through so much stuff the past couple hours here. So I'm going to try to figure out. I might even try to get some a program that can kind of chop up videos that are too long so I can kind of try to make it into certain topics that we went through.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to try to look for that. But either way, I just want to say for those that are going to be seeing this eventually, that I'll upload. Hopefully this was a message that encouraged you to fear the Father. As our brother Tobiah vehemently,
Vehemently.
I'm
Get
sorry.
the word right.
Sorry, vehemently kept harping on how important it is to fear Yahuwah and fear Yahusha, and not let this world conform our minds.
Yes.
So I pray that this would be a message for you that you can get from, and hopefully the other stuff we talked about would be some decent information for you. I know Brother Dennis and we mentioned some truther stuff we kind of hit point on. Brother Tobiah did too, about the money in this country. So don't cling on to your money so much. It's not worth anything anyway. Don't be worried about this paper money. It's not worth 1 cent. So all
it's
it is
going to be taken away very soon.
Yeah, we all need to train ourselves to let go of stuff like this, because once the mark of the beast happens, you're not going to be able to buy or sell anything anyway. You're going to have to fully depend on the Father right now. So the best thing we can do as believers is actually put all of our trust in Him right now. So it'll be easy by the time that happens that, we're already trusting in Him. So it's kind of like, now we're ready. So thank you for listening in and staying with us for the rest of this Yom, this day. So thank you very much, and shalom.
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 Shalom.